sweaty Leddy. Get sweaty Leddy. Get sweaty Leddy. Get sweaty Leddy.
Get Sweaty with Leddy, a wellness program about pain management.
Hello everyone, welcome to today's episode of Get Sweaty with Leddy. The wind blew in a good friend of mine, Natalie Webster, content creator on YouTube with her program Life After a Cult, where she exposes cult nonsense. Natalie herself grew up in Hawaii in a family of Scientology, and after 35 years, she escaped with 3 generations of her family. It's an incredible story and one I'm excited to hear about on the bench. So let's go inside and check it out. Welcome to today's episode of Get Sweaty with Leddy. I'm excited to be sitting here with Natalie Webster. Say hello, Natalie.
Hello. I'm really excited to get sweaty with Leddy.
No doubt, no doubt. Well, I'm so glad you're here. Natalie and I met just by being local business operators around the Lake Minnetonka area.
Yeah.
She's a part of the team that's putting together the Shoreline Hotel, which is, correct me if I'm wrong, but the first hotel on Lake Minnetonka in over 80 years.
It is the first hotel built on the shores of Lake Minnetonka in over 100 years.
There it is. All right. That sounds better.
Yeah.
I'm glad we got that clarification. So
Gotta keep it straight.
Yeah, the hotel is going to be open this spring, right? All set for summer. So if you're thinking about checking out the Lake Minnetonka area, there's no better place to do it than at the Shoreline Hotel. So I'm excited for that to come together, but I'm more excited about the conversation that we're going to have because Natalie has a very interesting story when it comes to pain. It's not your typical story, and although you never want anybody to get into a situation where they're in pain, but you most definitely don't want anybody to get in a situation with your type of pain. So please, Natalie, tell us what brings you into pain.
What brings me into pain? The club that you do not want to belong in. I have dealt with muscle spasms and joint pain for years, really debilitating. At one point, my muscle spasms were so strong, my doctor said they were breaking down my muscles on a cellular level. And it took me quite a while to connect with a doctor who understood what was going on, mainly because I wasn't showing the pain in a way that an average person would. And that is because I grew up in a cult called Scientology, and I currently do a YouTube channel called Life After a Cult, where I talk about my experience and expose other cults as well. And because of what happened growing up in Scientology, it caused that a lot of the trauma that happened caused my brain to rewire, and so my nervous system wasn't working with my muscles. But here was the problem. I kept going into the doctor and explaining using the correct words of what was happening. But I had spent 35 years being indoctrinated in this cult to never show pain, to never complain. And so I would go in and sit there, and these muscle spasms usually occurred at night. So it's not like I went to the doctor and then, I'm having them and she can see it. For 3 months, I was like, no, these are really bad. I thought I was doing a good job of explaining myself. I was not, because of my brainwashing around not expressing pain. And so what I ended up doing was videotaping when it would happen, and I showed it to my doctor.
Wow.
And she's like, why didn't you tell me it was this bad? And I'm like, girl, I've been trying to tell you and other people. And she's the first doctor who sat me down and said, Natalie, when you talk about these things, when you talk about this pain, you talk about it like it's not a big deal. I'm like, I don't understand. She's like, well, you're talking about it like how we're talking right now. I'm like, well, that's how I communicate. But if you want help from medical professionals, you have to really present and show that, not stuff it down and put it away like I've always done with my pain, which is part of what got me in such a situation. So after that, I kind of had some breakthroughs. I started working with neurologists at the University of Minnesota, and they're the ones that said, your time in this cult really worked to rewire your brain because you were in it from childhood, and there were a lot of traumatic things that happened. So I'm like, okay, well, that helps with the understanding. In fact, they told me, They said, well, we usually see this with veterans who've done multiple tours of duty.
Whoa, some serious PTSD.
Yeah. So they're like, what was your, like, were you in the military? I'm like, no, but I was in this cult and I told them about it. And that's more, I've come to learn, is what they call complex PTSD. Whereas somebody in the military who had saw a lot of violence would be that regular PTSD. And the solutions were basically some cognitive behavioral therapy, neurological physical therapy, not just physical therapy. That was making me worse. And this was why. So I started to do those things, along with a huge part of it. Why they recommended the cognitive behavioral therapy is your mindset around it. And those things all started helping. And I realized, wow, there can be less pain.
Wow, that's very interesting. And I know from my own personal, dealings with pain that, growing up a hockey player, trying to be tough, not showing pain, it was hard for me to articulate what I was going through for a while, but I have since learned how to properly share my pain just by fully understanding it. Yeah. And it took a lot of time to be able to, break through the old perception that I had of pain and kind of be honest with myself about what really is happening, because once you can fully understand it, then you can start to overcome it.
Yeah, exactly. Rather than just pushing it away or persisting, continuing on no matter what. And in the cult I grew up in, Scientology, that's how we operated, was you just pushed through. You kept going. You just needed to do your job, and whatever thing you were trying to achieve, you just had to do it anyways. And that's really not a way to operate. We should listen to our bodies. Pain is a signal to our bodies. And it took me a long time to wrap my head around that. And my pain tolerance was so high, as probably yours was, because when you deal with a lot of pain or chronic pain, you're just used to it.
Yeah.
It's just like, okay. I mean, there's times where it's incredibly painful, but I'm like, well, what am I going to do? Yeah. I'm kind of stuck with it. So I need to find a way to best work with it and not suffer my suffering.
Right. You're just conditioning yourself to accept it as the norm. And again, that's what we're here for, is pain is not normal, and you should not condition yourself to think that that's normal. And that's why it's so interesting to hear how, I don't know, this group that you were brought up in that was supposed to be so great, you didn't have a choice. You were just in there.
No.
So what state did you grow up in where you were living in Scientology?
Well, it started in Hawaii, which is where I'm from, and I've still never fully acclimated to Minnesota, even though I've been here for 30 years. And when I was a teenager, when I was a kid, my mom got into Scientology. When I was 5, she married a Scientologist, and this was in Hawaii. And over time, when we were young, when we were kids, we started our indoctrination into Scientology, which is pretty mandatory if you're the kids of a Scientologist. And so I grew up with that mindset and this belief system that really ignored self-care. It was all about what you could do for the group. Scientology is very much, what have you done for us lately? Oh, you volunteered last week? What have you done for us lately? It's very much like that.
Wow.
We would do these drills called training routines from childhood. You do them over and over and over again in Scientology. And where you sit with your hands on your lap, someone else sits in front of you, and you sit there and you basically look at each other in the eyes, and you cannot move, cannot flinch, nothing. That moves on to what they call bull baiting, where you then try and push the person's buttons. You can't physically touch them, but you can say or do anything. If they laugh, if they cry, if they get angry, you say, the coach, the person doing it says flunk, start, and they do it again. And they'll do the same thing to push your button over and over and over again until you don't react to it. Well, what this does is it creates this real type of this disassociation where you have a very high tolerance for BS, to be honest, because the pain, the discomfort, the natural reactions, it's so dangerous for children because it drills out of you that stranger danger, those instincts. It drills it out of you to not react, and basically to make you a robot so that you can do the bidding of L. Ron Hubbard and the current leader of this cult, David Miscavige.
Wow. I'm not incredibly familiar with Scientology, but I definitely got sucked into Leah Remini's whole program about it. Yeah. And it is I was fascinated, right? Fascinated, just part disbelief. I was like, how could all of these so-called powerful people be involved in this? Like, aren't they smarter than that? Like, how could they just be caught in? And yeah, I can't believe that it's still a thing, to be honest.
Yeah, they're shrinking, but it is still a thing. And mind control and brainwashing is a very powerful tool used by cults. And you might be surprised how many other people kind of lean into that behavior. You look online with online trolls or people kind of hating on each other or people who they don't know. There are these parasocial relationships, which started back in the day when television first came about. People would be sitting in their homes and feel like they had a real relationship with the person they were watching. And fast forward today to not just television and movies, but social media, where things can get really twisted. And it can be really good because you can create these communities for a lot of healing and doing like what you're doing. But you always got to kind of watch out for the trolls. And one of my biggest surprises after I got on YouTube, I've been doing my channel for a little over a year now, I thought that type of controlling behavior was Scientology only, or people in cults only. And I came to find out that it's the behavior of a fair amount of people on the internet who think they can tell you who you should be friends with, who you shouldn't be friends with. You support this person, I'm unsubscribing to you. And people get to make their choices on who and which creator they want to support. But having come from a very controlling cult who tried to tell me who I can and I can't be friends with, you know, I'm repelled by that, as a lot of people are. So on my channel, we also talk about that type of cult behavior, even on the internet, because sometimes people just don't realize that they're doing it, or maybe they're a victim of it and they don't see that manipulation. So I like to talk about that too on my channel.
Did you have any children or like friends growing up that you just wanted to be friends with that you couldn't be friends with, or were you that just separated from the ability to connect with others outside of Scientology?
Well, when I was growing up, I could pretty much be friends with who I wanted to. As I got older, you know, around 13 or so, it became you have less time for friends because you need to be at Scientology doing your courses or volunteering. They take up so much of your time and create this mentality of an us versus them. So people on the outside, this was one of the big contradictions in Scientology. There's many contradictions. And this one was, well, we're here to help people, to create a world without insanity, without war. Yet it's an us versus them. You can't trust these people on the outside. You can't trust the government. You can't trust law enforcement. You can't trust people who question Scientology or have something negative to say about it. So what ends up happening is your world becomes very small. They indoctrinate you into believing that you need to create this echo chamber of surrounding yourself only with people who agree about Scientology. So if there's family members who disagree, boom, disconnection, which is something that Scientology practices. If it's somebody who's questioning or critical of Scientology, their human rights abuses, you cannot communicate with them. When I left Scientology 15 years ago, I was able to leave with 3 generations of my family.
Wow.
It took me 2 years to do that. From the day I decided I'm done till we were able to openly leave was 2 years, because I wanted to leave with as many family members as I could.
So what was that 2-year time period like mentally for you? Were you having to, you know, essentially just operate in disguise
Yes.
and not talk to anybody? Were you afraid of, you know, talking to your family members about getting out and then maybe having them decide that they don't want to and they're reporting you, and then all of a sudden you're in a worse situation than before?
Very much so. I didn't tell my own husband that I was looking and reading things on the internet. It was quite a while. And then one day he brought it up to me that he had seen something, and I'm like, oh, tell me. And then afterwards, when I realized that he had the same doubts and reservations about Scientology that I did, I told him the truth. I decided back when I wanted to leave, and kind of here's a plan I've been working on. And then he was on board with it because he didn't want to be there either. But I was afraid because Scientology very much has a snitch culture. They write reports on you. So I didn't know if he would do that. My daughter was still in Clearwater, Florida, training to be a staff member for Scientology here in the Twin Cities. And if they found out that I was what they call disaffected, They could have sent her anywhere in the world to get her away from me because she had turned 18 while she was there.
Oh, man. And it's like they're controlling your child.
Yeah, exactly. So I couldn't say anything. I had to play along while I worked on this plan, and it took 2 years. And it was rough because I kept having to pretend like I was still fully on board.
Right.
But I knew the most important thing to me was getting my daughter back. And once I got my daughter back, then we officially left. Even though in the beginning, she didn't want to leave Scientology. I had to very cloak and dagger it. She was in Clearwater, Florida. I sent her an itinerary that was not real. My plan was to get her back and never send her back. She was going on a trip to Mexico with her dad, my former husband. And the whole idea was he, of course, would take her to Mexico on this vacation, but she could eat, sleep, chill, and kind of start to deprogram from Scientology. Mm-hmm. She didn't know this because if we told her, because she was so brainwashed, she would have stayed. Mm-hmm. So I send her an itinerary that wasn't real. She thinks she's going back. I sent a new cell phone for Christmas so that no one in Scientology had the number. I changed the number. She just thought it was a Christmas gift. Got her home and then started letting her know, hey, the leader of Scientology physically abuses his staff. Multiple whistleblowers have come out and they're telling the truth about what happens at the top. It took time, but she eventually came around and then was like, yes, this is not okay. And she went to college. She ended up getting her master's degree. She's married. She owns her own home. She's got an amazing child.
That's great to hear.
A life she would not have had if she stayed in Scientology.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So yeah, 15 years. So that was like right around the time when Leah Remini did come out with her thing, or just before that. What was that feeling for you to see someone else trying to take down
Scientology?
David Miscavige?
Yeah. Oh, I loved it. And honestly, once Leah Remini's show came out, Scientology in the Aftermath, the harassment that I was experiencing pretty much stopped. We would see people outside our house here on Lake Minnetonka taking pictures. I had my tire slashed twice in 1 week, the same tire, after a hang-up call from somebody from Scientology.
Oh, man.
Just stuff like that. And when that show came out, they were just focused on her. You know, I'm not so much a problem. And now today, fast forward 2025, there are so many people speaking out, sharing their experiences about Scientology, even on social media and YouTube, that they just can't, they
don't have the bandwidth to be able to be everywhere at once.
They can't follow all of us.
That's good to hear. I will say, I was thinking to myself, I'm like, is one of those Scientology people out in this ice house out there? Are they going to be spying on us in this glorious Excelsior sauna? Like, no.
If they are, I just hope they get my good side.
Yeah. We'll tell them to come on in here and sweat with us, right? I got a nice cold hole for you there, Scientology. So, like, was there a time period when you're waking up and you're like, all right, where are they? Or how are they going to try to affect me today?
Back when I first left, because when I first left, what happened is Scientology put together what they call a dead agent pack, a file. They do this on everybody who leaves. They put together this file. They go through files that they already have on you, and they either bring forward things that they think will embarrass you. They try to emotionally blackmail you into being silent, or they completely make things up. And in my case, they made up a bunch of stuff. And I was like, I did some things in the past. Why don't you go with that? Well, one of the things I did when I knew I was going to publicly leave Scientology, I was writing a column for the Lakeshore Weekly. It was called the Lakeshore Weekly News. They're not around now, but I wrote this column for 10 years. And when I decided to leave Scientology, I made a list of everything I thought they might do that they thought would embarrass me or bring out, and I started writing about it.
Oh, that's great.
I started sharing my story, and that immediately sent a message to them. I don't care.
I love that approach.
I'm imperfect. People are imperfect. We make mistakes. I'm human. We learn. And they don't count on that because there's such a degree of purity culture in Scientology. They're the most ethical people on the planet, is what they consider themselves to be.
Wow.
But yeah, it was freaky for a while, but when Leah Remini came out and her show came out, more and more people started coming out and speaking about Scientology, starting YouTube channels, talking about it on social media. And eventually, that I'm aware of, that, you know, that kind of died down. And even now, I do a YouTube channel where I'm online live streaming 6 days a week, talking about Scientology and other cults. And really, it's like, what are they going to do? Nothing. There's nothing they can do. And that's a big part of leaving Scientology, is recognizing they don't have power over you.
Right.
They're the ones that brainwashed us to believe that no one would accept us in the outside world, that only they understand. And the opposite, of course, is true. I made way better friends outside of Scientology, and I actually made real friends outside of Scientology. Because how can you be a real friend when they indoctrinate you to snitch on each other?
Yeah.
You can't really open up. You can't be vulnerable.
Wow.
And what Scientology does is they try to exploit your vulnerability if you speak out about it. But today, knowing what we know about how our brains work and having a better relationship with my own mental health, and because in Scientology, you can't go to a psychiatrist, you can't take psychiatric drugs, you can't go to a counselor. They're against valid mental health treatment. And that can take a while for people who've been in a cult like Scientology, so against that, to be willing to take those steps to actually get help. But when you do, you find out that, hey, even people not in a cult are dealing with some of the crazy that I deal with.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Man, that must have felt good to like have your first friend.
Oh, it did. Yeah.
You still friends with that person?
Yes, I don't see her much anymore because she was one of my neighbors at the time, but I remember that.
That's
I
cool.
totally remember that. And as I got to know people, and then learning too, because in Scientology, there's so much, there's no boundaries. They can ask us anything at any time, and we have to tell them the truth. And they do interrogations where, because if you are not towing the line of Scientology, or you're critical about it, or you want to leave, Scientologists believe it's because you have sinned, or in Scientology, it's called an overt. You've done things, these harmful acts against Scientology, and that's why you want to leave. So you have to cleanse yourself. You have to admit to these crimes, these imagined crimes that Scientology says you have, through a process called security checking, or like an interrogation. So what ends up happening for many Scientologists, especially those of us who grew up in it, we end up with a little bit of diarrhea of the mouth because we're so used to telling everything. And that's something I've learned, and I channeled it into an entire career where I thought, okay, where can I use this? I wanted to look at it as a skill and not a weakness.
Yeah.
Well, I got a job at My Talk 107.1 doing a radio show, because those characteristics helps you be a good radio host. Yeah. Did a podcast. Now I'm doing my YouTube channel. And I'm also learning about boundaries, that it's okay to have boundaries with different people. But it's a trip. It's a whole different world and life outside of Scientology that is 110% better.
Oh, I'm so grateful that you're here. This conversation is heating up nicely, and this sauna is heating up nicely. Yeah. But we got to throw some logs on here to get us to the point where we're comfortable to cold plunge. So let's take a break for a moment, get a little water, and let's finish this off.
Sounds good.
Feeling fantastic in this sauna now. We're starting to glisten. Pretty soon we'll be pouring sweat.
Yeah, we're sweating.
And you're pouring it all out here for us for your Scientology story. So it's been fascinating to listen to that. And as we were stoking this fire here, we talked a little bit about the most difficult time period for you, and that was life in the Sea Org.
Yes, the Sea Organization, which is Scientology's paramilitary branch. You sign a billion-year contract because you're going to come back lifetime after lifetime after lifetime to forward the aims of Scientology. L. Ron Hubbard and the current leader, David Miscavige. And I joined the Sea Organization when I officially joined. I was about 16. I had become a Scientology staff member at 15 in Hawaii. Then I went into the Sea Organization, and that was probably some of the most difficult times because you're basically on call 24/7. You live in a dorm with bunk beds 3 high, just row after row after row. Sometimes as many as 15 people in one room, maybe with a bathroom, maybe not. You have to go to the communal showers. If you're married, you get your own room. And then in my situation, I got married right away because I'm like, oh, I'll get married. I don't have to live in a dorm.
I want my own room.
I want my own
The
room.
perks of marriage in Scientology.
Yes. And in the C organization, you are not allowed to have premarital sex. So a lot of people get married at 15, 16 years old. And divorce is not a problem in Scientology. And no one in the C organization has time to date. So I always say you don't date in the C organization. You marry. And then when it doesn't work out, you divorce. And you don't have time to date. You're not allowed for any type of fun touching. It's so controlled. And so I ended up getting married at 17. And you don't have any regular time off. You can request it if your statistics are up. So every single staff member in Scientology keeps a graph of, so if you sold books, it would be how many books you sold a day or in that week. And how much you are accepted into the group depends purely upon your production or what you did through the group, for the group. So for many people growing up in Scientology, we didn't grow up in a family environment where you're nurtured or loved or taught acceptance or grace. You're treated basically more like you're a member of a team, because in Scientology, children, L. Ron Hubbard said, are just big beings in little bodies. So their responsibilities should be as much as an adult. They should be able to be exposed to adult things and be fine with it. Not true at all. So that makes it very difficult. And in the C organization now, you're working all day and night. If your statistics aren't right or you say something out of line, you're punished with sleep deprivation, food deprivation. Whole organizations in the C organization they could only eat beans and rice as punishment for what they were doing. Lots of manual labor. If you were a victim of a crime, you are blamed. It's the victim's fault somehow. And at the same time, they cover up any type of sexual assault going on. It's not that they are for that, but they cover it up because they don't want law enforcement to come sniffing around Scientology.
Right. Wow.
Yeah.
Could you imagine, being reincarnated in a body and then all of a sudden you're in the Sea Org and you're like, what the hell? Like, screw you, previous life.
Exactly. What have I signed up for?
Man. So how long were you in the Sea Org for?
Let's see. I was about 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. I was 6 years in the Sea organization. So when I got married at 17, at 18, I became pregnant, which is not allowed in the Sea organization because they didn't have the facilities to take care of children. And if you kept the baby, you got sent away to work at a smaller Scientology organization as punishment, because now the Sea organization, you got your food, you got a place to stay. But when you're a staff member out in a Scientology organization, you have to pay rent, you have to have all the expenses of the outside, and you make no money working for Scientology. So it's very difficult. And because my husband at the time and I refused, we wanted our child, we were sent away that way and mistreated while I was there. I wasn't allowed to walk around looking pregnant. It wasn't a celebratory pregnancy. I wasn't allowed to talk to people about it because they didn't want them getting ideas that having a child in a family is a good thing.
That would be very traumatic because you're excited and you're having to hide this thing, and exactly. You don't know what's going to happen to the baby when it's born, probably, all of that. The other thing in Scientology is L. Ron Hubbard says that you need to have a silent birth. So the woman, as much as possible, cannot make any noise. You want people to not make noise, and you don't want to use drugs. I had 3 kids naturally. I did not need to do that. Oh, man. Because of Scientology. Yeah. Which is probably a part, too, why I have such a high pain tolerance. So at what point after you were out of the Sea Org did you start noticing, just pains in your body and, that stemmed from likely your mind? Yeah. In my mid-20s, I started having symptoms of what I learned would become Graves' disease, an autoimmune disease, where when your immune system is stimulated, your body creates antibodies that attack your thyroid, that attacks healthy tissue. The flip side of that is Hashimoto's disease, also autoimmune, does the same thing, but in a different way. I had both because, I'm an overachiever. And with that, that's kind of when I found out about it, because one day I'd been going to my doctor again.
not being super clear, like really showing the pain, just using the correct words and not getting help. I'm like, I get these dizzy spells, like I feel like I'm gonna pass out. And I'm describing all these symptoms, like my heart rate, and a few doctors were like, well, that just sounds like anxiety. Now, this was years ago. These days, I feel like doctors know more. When a woman comes in and tells you something's going on, don't just assume right off the bat it's anxiety.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. And I wasn't being taken seriously. And one day I passed out at work while helping a customer. I worked in my parents' trophy shop at the time and went to the ER and then got to the bottom of it and turned out it was that. So for years, I had to figure out how to treat that. And with it can come like muscle pain and joint pain. But over years, it was getting worse at times. And when it was its worst was probably like 7 or 8 years ago. And I didn't know then. I didn't understand how this was tied to the trauma of growing up in Scientology and my experiences there. I didn't know that they were connected until really just a few years ago. But the thing is, even neurology didn't really realize that. The neurologist I saw at the U of M sat me down and said, you know, we understand the brain more today, and we didn't think that we could rewire a brain, but we can. So not only can it be rewired due to trauma, but it can be wired back to a more efficient way of working. And how you do that is through a lot of mindset work, cognitive behavioral therapy for some people, really managing your stress, getting to where it's like, okay, I can control pretty much this and that is it.
Yeah.
A lot of that.
I mean, mindset is, you know, the power of the mind is step one when it comes to healing. And it's so important that in every episode that we talk about, or that we're talking about pain, mindset is always at the top of something that you can do to start righting the ship.
Yeah.
You know, because when you're in the Sea Org, you're probably teeting around. You got to right that ship, huh?
You're stuck in fight or flight.
Yeah.
That's what leads to a lot of the trauma and the effects physically. They keep you stuck in fight or flight. It's life or death. Your job, no matter what your job is, could be doing dishes. It is life or death that you get it done. If you are not there to do your job, the planet will stop spinning. So you're constantly in fight or flight. And that just really messes with you. It messes with your nervous system.
Yeah, that's incredibly stressful on your body and mind.
Oh, totally.
So at what point, you know, when you were, because it's got to take a lot to decide that you got to get out, but then it's got to, there's also a decision where it's like, I got to, not only do I need to get out, I need to help people.
Yeah.
What made you feel compelled to be on that side of everything?
The reason I went and I started doing YouTube, it started out, I was doing an interview with another creator growing up in Scientology, sharing my Scientology story. This was December of 23. And I got such amazing feedback from it. And I realized, you know, I left Scientology because so many people came forward and shared their stories. It helped my family leave Scientology. So I feel like I want to pay that forward. And the more I learned more about the effects of being in a cult, the psychological effects of leaving, of figuring yourself out after that, I realized that this cult mentality exists in so many places. People who would tell you, oh no, I've never been in a cult, but they're behaving in ways as if they were.
Wow.
So I'm learning more that it's kind of this black and white thinking. And so I talk about that on my channel too. You don't have to have, you know, been in Scientology or even been in a cult. The majority of my audience have never been in Scientology, but are all in on ending this cult. And they connect mine and others. One, because, you know, if you can't be a good example, at least be a cautionary tale.
Right.
And that's kind of how it ends up being. And I've learned so much from my audience who has modeled grace, acceptance, that it made me want even more to reach out beyond just Scientology, but cult in general, and educate about that, learn about it myself, and basically help people see the ways that they might be being brainwashed that they're not even aware of, because it's all around us.
Yeah. You used the term while we were getting this fire going. You want to unbrainwash people.
Yes.
And unbrainwashing people is, you're likely dealing with people that have no idea that they're brainwashed. I mean, I would say the majority of people probably that are brainwashed have no idea.
Yeah.
And it's just, you know, following your content, following what you're doing, you know, hopefully a light bulb will click in some people where they can recognize that and they can take some of the information that you're putting out there and use it for their own benefit.
That is the goal. And I think people are. I hear from a lot of people on my channel, and it does seem to be happening. And my goal is to just continue to grow my channel. There's people I want to have on and interview, but my channel will need to be of a certain size before they answer my emails. So
Go figure.
It's another motivation to do that. But I find it helps me continue in my healing from Scientology. And I think that's often the case when you're going through something. Helping other people can be part of that healing. And I have found for me, that is been what's most effective. So that's what I hope to do and bring to YouTube.
Right. Wow. Do you ever have, people reaching out that'll see your stuff and then they think that either a close friend of theirs or maybe a family member is trapped and they're trying to ask you for help in that sense? Has that happened yet?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And it depends on the cult. In Scientology, what I often say is be the best friend, family member that you can to that person. Because as long as they're brainwashed, they're not going to listen to you. Mm-hmm. You're not going to convince them to leave. But trust me when I tell you, enough happens in Scientology that they already have doubts. So be that safe space for them. Hold space for them. Let them learn on their own and figure it out. At some point, they're going to reach out because you were the safe person who didn't judge them, who they didn't feel judged by. But a lot of times in cults and Scientology, people don't go back to their friends and family that they disconnected from or pulled away from because they're embarrassed that they fell for a cult. But it's really not about that. Really smart, capable people end up getting involved in cults.
Oh, I'm so happy that you're out here doing this work because not many people are. Not many people can. And not many people have the wherewithal to recognize past traumas and turn those into opportunities for other people to heal. So I'm so grateful for you doing that for others.
Thank you.
Yeah. And what else I'm so grateful for is this heat.
Oh, it's really hot.
And this impending cold plunge that
really
we're about
freaked
to
out
do.
About that.
It's another good opportunity for people to heal their minds, right? Is go in a nice cold hole, withstand, endure.
So I'm told.
And then you come out a better person.
I might jump in and jump right back out.
That's fine. That's fine. Have you cold plunged before?
I did the polar plunge years ago over in Excelsior, the New Year's Day one.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
Well, it's about 9 degrees outside, so it's balmy compared to what we've been experiencing recently. But I think you're going to enjoy the hole.
All right.
You ready to go find out?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Like a jacuzzi.
Set my feet up for success on the way out.
All right, you ready for me to go in?
Yes.
All right. Let's cold plunge. Yum. Get me in this water.
Okay, ready?
Yeah.
All right. I can do it.
You can do it.
I can do it. So let's go down
Careful,
backwards.
the steps are a little slippery.
Okay. Okay, so then
transition to Mr. Ladder.
Oh! Oh!
Yeah.
Oh! Oh! Oh!
Yes.
Okay, I did it! That's good. I'm done.
Yes.
Oh my god!
Good job. Feel that sun. Get that robe on.
My legs are numb. Look at you.
Good job. Well, 9, sunny and 9 out. I feel like I'm on vacation.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
I
isn't
can't
that-
believe you're still in there.
Oh. Yeah. Little pieces of ice. The ice was incredibly thick today. I thought it looked like 4 inches, but it was 6 inches we had to cut through.
Wow.
Yeah, it was half the amount, but we got it out. We got the hole. We're in the hole. We're feeling great, and that's what it's all about. Oh yeah. Tuck my face. All right, let's go back in and sweat. Hooah! Voila!
Oh my gosh.
I love it. All right, to make the trek back, I always try to tell people to keep your shoulders back so you're not scrunching up your neck and tensing your muscles.
It actually feels nice outside of it.
See?
Yeah.
Tell that to Isha. It feel.
Yeah, once not in the water.
Whew. So, what did you think of that plunge, Natalie?
I thought it was very, very shocking to the system, for sure.
I couldn't tell.
But it felt good coming out of there. Like, wow, I'm not actually cold. Once I got my robe on, my legs felt numb, but my head was still sweating.
Yeah.
So, but I'm glad I did it because it's such a crazy thing to do in the middle of winter here.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I have my motivation though because I'm going to go break into your place and get some of those THC drinks.
Yes. And you mentioned earlier that you used to be on a medication to deal with a lot of your problems. And,
I had, as part of my autoimmune stuff, I had like my heart rate would run really high. And my doctor hesitantly put me on a medication for it that I took as needed, which was almost daily. And I didn't discover cannabis till late in life. I mean, like my late 40s, my mid 40s maybe. But I never had used it with any regularity. And I did, and I realized for the next 3 days, I didn't have to take that medicine. My heart wasn't racing. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. Did it again. And I started having more time in between when I would need to take that medication. I go back to my doctor. He's like, okay, we need to refill your, that med. I'm like, no, I got plenty. And then he was about to ream me on not taking it because it can damage my heart, because blah, 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 blah. If I don't get it slowed down. I'm like, my heart rate's been fine. He's like, what have you been doing? I'm like, cannabis. He's like, continue.
good for him to say that.
Yeah, he did. And this was before medical.
Wow.
But he recognized, he said, the side effects you're going to get from the medication I'm giving you is actually worse for you than using cannabis on occasion. And if that's working for you to manage your stress and anxiety, which lowers my heart rate, then you do you, boo.
It is a magical plant, and I'm very grateful that we do have the opportunity to sell it alongside of our beer in the form of THC seltzers. Because it's fun to introduce this powerful, magical plant to people that used to think it was going to cause nothing but harm.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm glad that you enjoy those beverages. We're going to go inside and enjoy that shortly. And if you want to enjoy more of Natalie and everything that she's doing to share her story and to help others, make sure you're tuning into her YouTube channel.
Life After a Cult. You can find me on YouTube.
Awesome. Well, she's doing daily streams every morning, putting out tons of great content, so that you're going to catch her anytime you want to catch her. So
That's right.
Natalie, thank you so much for being on this episode of Get Sweaty with Leddy.
Thank you for having me.
You sweated it out like a natural?
I did. What a great experience.
All right. Until next time, everybody. We'll see you soon.